Cool. So Fabrizio, welcome. Thanks for coming. Cheers. Good to see you.
Cheers.
So I've been really looking forward to today, I must admit, as an episode goes. You are, by way of introduction, you are the Chief of Engineering for 90% of everything. Correct. And that business is it's a very innovative tech firm building solutions for the maritime shipping and logistics sectors, hence where 90% of everything came from as a name, I understand it, because 90% of everything is shipped via the sea, which I found very interesting. First time I heard that. So since starting, the business started in 2017. We've scaled now to over 120 engineers. You've got 7 products live across 50 divisions. And these are really impressive numbers. I see a lot of companies in the market day in, day out, a lot of startup, scale-up companies, and there's not many that have achieved what you guys have achieved in the time that you've done it. So really, really impressive. And I think not only is it impressive the numbers that you've got to, but the way in which you've scaled the team as well and scaled the business, sort of how you've structured those divisions. I think, from our first chat, I found really, really interesting. So would love to unpack that a little bit more and pick your brains today. But I guess before we do that, let's talk about you. It'd be lovely to hear a little bit more about you as, your background and your career to date. And I guess, a little bit about your journey through tech leadership, if you would be so kind.
Of course. Well, I'm Italian originally, so I actually all my career worked in London. So I came after university, and the main reason to come was to get in offline business. So I studied that for my master, how to have a successful business online, and that is something that in Italy was not existing in 2008. So came here straight out of uni. Since then I've been working in tech at different levels and different size of companies. The largest, for sure, is the company where I'm working now. So we have roughly 200 people, so just short of 200 people at this moment. Around 130 are in the engineer division, and that's by far the largest I've been working on. Yeah, so it's been a very exciting journey, and we heads down for 5 years. Heads down working and building, and we had built a lot actually. So that's not just me, obviously, but it's all the people involved that we achieve a lot. And good news is now the businesses start to find finally the first success in the commercial area, which is difficult provided the maritime space is an old-time industry where technology is seen by skepticism, and the purchases are big, digital transformations, which are not an easy sale. And when you sell, it's a very lengthy process to convert into a successful installation on the platform.
Fantastic. Well, that all sounds very, very interesting indeed, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about the particular sector and industry, I guess, because I'm sure there's some real specific challenges that you face in the maritime and shipping industry. So before we get into that, it'd be great to just understand a little bit more about you as a tech leader, I suppose, to kind of be in control of or looking after a squad of 120 engineers. That must be, must have your Weetabix in the morning. But what do you feel are the greatest qualities and the most valuable attributes to have as a tech leader? Do you think there's anything that's been quite, a tribute to your success?
I think one of the gifts that all this experience gave me is see different things, different industries. So I worked for Time Out at some point, so into magazine and tourism. I worked into a company called Powwow Now, which at some point was all over the tube with very fancy advertising in telecom conferencing. Then I worked in recruitment with a very small firm called Brave New Talent. After that, I jumped into mobile. So I was, I think, if not the first, the second engineer in a company called Bisbee. So we did gigs, basically, in the gig economy, like cleaners and handymen on demand in London and UK. So that is really also one of things that I can recall whenever there is a something in my career that I look back. That's a gift to be involved in so many industries and just in, let's say, just in 10 years. And that is what you have to. You need to have that exposure to technology to make certain decisions. Sometimes is a matter of be able to listen to people that know more about you, not have arrogance to say I know everything and this is the way. And when you are for a few years in this industry, you realize there's no right or wrong. There never is. There might be the right today, or there might be the right for the budget or for the knowledge that you have or for constraint. For example, if you are in AWS, you can't use solution available in Azure or something like that. But the experience that you really, in my opinion, the one of the skills that really helps me all the time is that I'm able to listen to people around me, not making assumption that I know best, even when that seems like suggested by people that either people organize the meeting or people that ask my opinion will say, well, you have done this before. Tell this guy that is never like that. Never.
Yeah.
So you really need to contextualize things and understanding what is the problem at hand, and have be humble and recognize that most probably the code that is built this year will be thrown away next year, and that is technology. And it was true when I started, and it's truer and truer every year that passes, because technology moves so fast. Arrogance doesn't pay off. It really doesn't. So just because something is the best thing this year doesn't mean that it will stay like that.
Yeah.
And we have many examples of this, actually.
Yeah, I can imagine. I think that's there's lots of fantastic points there. But yeah, certainly through, my 15 years of recruiting for tech professionals, I've obviously spoken to a lot of people, a lot of fantastic engineers, and I guess there is this stigma, stereotype, call it whatever you want, sometimes of the big ego getting in the way of, very good engineers that actually incredible coders, but for whatever reason, their ego often doesn't gel with the rest of the team. And, I think those people that I've seen go on and be very successful are the ones that, they are very pragmatic and they get that, yes, they're excellent at what they do, but it's actually a team sport. It's a team effort as well.
Absolutely. So. If you have a team, yes. So most of the people that I met through my career are actually individuals that have other individual company or are contractors, and they work in many different projects, and sometimes they don't experience the work in a team. However, if you do have a team, and if a company works or has a budget to hire a team, that team working is really the first thing, because technology can be taught. We changed our recruitment tests based on this fact. We used to do interviews that were almost quiz, and we completely stopped because we realized that if you don't know something, you can learn. If you're good, you can learn that.
Yeah.
If it's more enough, even in an afternoon, by reading documentation. So it doesn't matter if we ask this question. We should actually ask about problem that you solved. Tell me the biggest challenges or the big success. Same thing, really, in engineering mind of your career. Tell me how you solved this and what you learned from that.
Okay.
For leadership position, what we ask is tell me an experience where things went wrong with a colleague and how did you fix it or how you didn't.
Yeah.
And usually that is a very good indication by letting the candidate speak of either they have done it or they're making up.
Yeah.
And usually when we have a feeling that people are making up things, we know between ourselves, we just cut it short on the next occasion, because the most important thing is honesty.
Yeah, great point. We did a roundtable, CTO roundtable a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about, that balance between hiring for skills versus hiring for attitude. And like you've just said, the tech world evolves at such a pace. It's literally exponentially evolving that there is no way now that you can become a master in all of these different tools and technologies out there. So if you get asked a potluck question in an interview on something you haven't worked on, doesn't mean you're not a great engineer, or like say you haven't got the aptitude to pick it up. So yeah, that's really refreshing to hear that, and I think it, really interested to delve down a little bit deeper into that actually, because I guess having scaled to 120 engineers, clearly you must have a pretty slick but robust recruitment process in terms of how you assess talent and bring them into the business. So talk us through a little bit more about what does that recruitment process look like for you?
Yeah, before touching that, first of all, you really need to have a good budget, and you need to have good colleagues, and not just on interviewer side, the tech side, but especially in-house recruiter or recruiter partnership with people that you really trust. So that's very important. And then for us specifically, we had an amazing COO and HR, which do a lot of screening calls for technology. And that was one reason of success. The second part is the mandate from CEO to implement the structure, to implement the plan, because you will fail if you don't have that. Doesn't matter how great is your plan, but if your plan of hiring is disaligned with the leadership team, the CEO especially, you're not going to succeed. So that I can't stress enough. It's very important. Whatever as a CTO or as a hiring manager you have in mind, if you don't have the backing up of your leadership team and CEO, it's not gonna happen.
Yeah,
it's as simple as that. So secure that your plan is sensible, and if just compromise with what the CEO has in mind as well. For us, was at a certain point was a matter of recognizing that a company structuring a team for backend, a team for front end was not going to work at the scale the CEO wanted.
Right.
It's just that we didn't realize that yet. So we changed completely strategy. We put in place a structure that was divided almost like Spotify. So it was divided in, let's call it division. We call them streams. So now the structure we put together 4 years ago still stands.
Okay.
So we put together streams, and the head of the streams, we put head of product stream and the technical owner. And we imagine this as an incubator. So basically we give power to head of product stream as a vice CEO or vice CPO, and tech owner as vice CTO. So they actually are responsible for whatever happened in the stream.
Okay.
In the stream, typically we have 2 or 4 teams. 4 teams is an extreme. We're not quite happy with that, but 2 and 3 team works well. So for one person, and our team are not larger than 6 core individuals, because we have shared resources such as Scrum Masters and QAs. QAs in the plan were shared. Now we have enough to actually have 1 per team. But the core team is made by 1 team leader, which is always technical, the team leader. So we made the choice to have management through experience and management through credibility, not management through just people management. So we made the choice about that. And 2 backenders, 2 frontender constitutes the classic team. We have exceptions. So for example, we have 1 team specialist on mobile. We have another team on big data, and they don't follow this, but let's say 12 out of 14 or 15 teams that might be now, they are on this shape. So that's the first thing I would say. Just have a plan, write down the plan without names, and explain that there is a coherent plan for the hiring. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
And then you really need to have and this is planning. So execution, you need to have another set of planning, which is about the process. You need to have a process that it's commensurated to the industry. So the industry you are in, for example, if you're hiring only in London, you know that certain things don't apply. We actually are very lucky because we have remitters who hire all over the world as long as it's 2 hours away from London. So and we did a stretch for Brazil, which is -3.
Okay.
So GMT -3 for Brazil is okay. We have 10 guys in Brazil. And we go to Ukraine, which is +2. Ukraine, Greece, and Bulgaria, which is +2. Okay. We also have 2 engineers in Mozambique, which are part of a partnership to grow young talent in Africa.
Cool.
But those are the boundaries for longitude-wise. So
still a big area.
Yeah, and that is amazing. But that was conscious decision. Didn't happen by mistake. So if and again goes in the plan. So you need to know. Why I say this? Because the steps of the interview, they can't be too many, but they can't be too few.
Yeah.
And they must be right, and they must be fair.
Totally agree.
And they must be written down because you want not to have a buzz factor. You don't want to be the person as a CTO in charge of the hiring. Well, if you have a small company, 5 people, you will be. You have to be. But if you are actually a mid-size or business of over 50 people, you need to delegate. That's a key word. And to delegate without confusion, you need to have a plan written down and what is the first process and what is the goal, then what's happened. And you need to tell the candidate at any phase, because the candidate is interviewing you. You're not interviewing the candidate. Especially in this day and age, there are more jobs than candidates for tech, let's say. And that's something that I keep on stressing with all interviews. Make sure that you have to be polite at all the time. You have to be clear. So before the interview states, for example, the final interview, we always state, this is going to work like this. We have a break in the middle. We go away and we take and we understand where to go for the next questions. So we have a break and we do, and then is your questions for us. So people know that there is something for them later. They don't interrupt. And then the other thing is we always say, is your time to talk. So we will not answer wrong question with wrong answers because we just have 1 hour and a half.
Yeah.
You have to talk. You have to demonstrate to us. We're not going to spend time correcting you. Unfortunately, this is not the time. We're just going to.
Which is fair, I think. And people will kind of get that. I think the fact I'm not really surprised that you've achieved the numbers you have achieved, because just listening to your thought process there, when I think about a lot of very good companies that we work with that have achieved real scale, they've gone from that kind of startup scale up phase, they have really put a lot of thought and effort into their process. And it sounds like you guys have done exactly that. They're not winging it. It's a real methodical process. And I think the key word you used actually, which I totally agree with, is alignment. I think the companies that really go on and achieve the kind of, I guess, cultural success, but, ultimately from a recruitment point of view, the numbers that they want to are those where the leadership of the business, like say CEO downwards, everybody's fully aligned, and, you haven't got this continual battle where, as a chief of engineering, you're constantly going back to the CEO, or kind of just get one extra headcount or one extra budget for this, or this kind of, the green light, and once you've got that, everyone can sort of funnel into the right direction to make the process as streamlined as possible. And I really like the way that you talk about transparency throughout the process as well, and how at the moment obviously it's quite a candidate rich market, because obviously we've entered into, unfortunately, quite a difficult time with a lot of redundancies being made, so it's a little bit more of a buyer's market. But I really like the respect that you're talking about between this isn't the candidate trying to impress you. Obviously it is, but it's a two-way street as well, right? It's that mutual respect between candidates and you as a business. And the last point I'll make that I really like there is around the thoughts around the stages of the process, and not too few but not too many. And I think that's where a lot of companies go really, really wrong. Either end of the spectrum is just as dangerous. Companies that make candidates jump through 7 or 8 hoops before they make them an offer. By that point, that candidate's long gone to a company with a slicker process. But in the same breath, companies that have too fewer stages, I think, is also very dangerous, because, psychologically, candidates, the better candidates anyway, I feel they do really need that time to grow, to understand the opportunity and get emotionally engaged with the business as well. And
Absolutely.
You can't do that within a half an hour telephone chat and an offer. So I really like the way you kind of talk about that. And Yeah, I think that's very, very sensible.
It's an investment for the company in terms of cost and time.
Yeah.
So the last thing that we want is people to don't know what they get into. So we really spend a lot to explain which situation is the business. For example, we are in B2B business. We try to sell software to an industry that sometimes a customer, the majority of the software they see is an Excel spreadsheet where they have all the information about their fleet and their operations. So it's quite difficult. So we need a very high level of quality when it comes to software. So we are not a startup where you can throw out and see what stick kind of mentality. Yeah. So we make sure that people know that very early on in the interview stage, so they don't expect. For example, the test they put a specific emphasis of documentation and explaining what they're doing, and we actually we have a problem with that because no matter how many times you write down or we communicate, it doesn't matter that you complete the test. What matters is that if you decide which function you want to write, just do it properly, as properly as you would think. Don't spend the day doing the test. We don't want that. Just spend 2 hours and give the best shot to the thing that you want to show us. Yeah. And it's remarkable that actually is very difficult, especially for certain cultures. It's very difficult just to stop at 2 hours. Yeah. Just carry on and they do everything. Then we see the opposite. We say, okay, well, but now we have to pick. Well, now we can pick more things to tell you that is really not efficient the way you're doing this, or it's not manageable at long term, the function that you write in this, you didn't do any documentation. How can we maintain this? So we are not really a B2C startup that just try to move fast and break things. We are the opposite. For reasons, we are the opposite. It's important to kind of know before, because otherwise we invested a lot of time in recruitment, or maybe we even hire, and then few weeks in the job, there's a realization that hurts both parties.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's I think the most sensible approaches now around those tech exercises are those, like you say, where you're testing their approach. What's their real world way of working?
The other suggestion I have for all my friends, that now I advise unofficially a few people, and the biggest advice that they seems not to have thought themselves, that I give to everybody is to have a test. No matter how simple it is, but have one. And I can't stress how important it is when you're here to have a test. Even so, if you're big, even more so, because the test is the one thing that is written down and shared on GitHub most probably, and ensure that they're not biased between the different candidates. That's one of the very few actually factual, non-biased things that you can have in the interview process. So just do that, have that. But then it's so easy to skip this and thinking, oh, I met somebody great, it doesn't need to be tested. That's a mistake. And I've done a couple of times this mistake. I've done a couple of times a skip test that resulted in an amazing hire. However, I would advise never do that, because you just lose a safety net. You just cut your own net, and the candidate express so much of themselves during the test. Even though that we have a lot of people say, I don't know how to do this, but I will search and do this. And you have an opportunity to ask questions about implementation, say, why did you do this? Did you really do this? Or sometimes we ask, did you do this yourself? Because it seems not to be able to back up your decisions. That happens sometimes, not in the minority case, but having a test is actually giving you a tool to discover this kind of things. So just one advice, that if anything, one advice should be taken off from this: don't drop the test. Even if it's very simple, just have one.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think, like I say, psychologically as well, it does work the other way. We had an instance quite recently with a very, very good senior engineer and one of our health tech clients who really loved the candidate. They did a half an hour interview with the candidate. They were absolutely sold. And genuinely was a very good candidate. And then the second stage interview was almost sort of the the same stage again because the manager was so reassured by the ability of the candidate, they felt that they didn't need to do that technical test. And then, made an offer, and a pretty generous offer to the candidate as well. So we presented the offer to the candidate, and the candidate kind of came back and said, look, I really like the person I met, and I like the company, what it does, sort of really altruistic kind of business. The thing that's really put me off is that they haven't even seen a line of my code. And he was the one that turned them down because he felt that, if they're not even testing my code at all, then, who are the other people they're hiring? And he obviously backed himself and knew he was a good engineer, but it does work both ways.
That's a very good point. Plans into retention, which is another key insight that, if anything, I can give to people listening. Don't underestimate how is important to retain the right people, because the candidate outside your company and the talent inside your company, they want all to work with the best. They might have different opinion of the best, but anybody agree they want to work with somebody nice to work with. That's I never find anybody that likes to work with people that keep on picking fights. That's never been the case.
Yeah.
So it's very important, but to show you must show candidates your best code inside before you interview them. So having the test show them, they actually spend time to put together this, and if the test is good, they can feel, this is better than the test the other company is asking me. So maybe there are more experienced people working in that, and that is really the first contact that you might have with a candidate as a tech hiring engineer.
Yeah.
So it's very important that you put down the best effort to write a good test, and you also show what you want, because if your test is all quiz, then it's clear that your company doesn't have challenging enough problems, and you need an engineer for either bug fixing or business as usual, or the things that you ask in the quiz, which I doubt, but just put a little bit of effort to do something. For example, our tests are for our domain, maritime domain, so it's a little bit aligned with the narrative that we want people to join us to work on software that touches real things rather than e-commerce. So it's all aligned to the narrative, but it shows that actually there are interesting problems to solve inside. And a couple of times, actually, I wrote down a test that is actually the very same problems that we have in the company.
All right, okay.
So, in fact, we did it for, recently we are data engineers. We did exactly that. And I spell out the problem we had and see which architecture they proposed.
Yeah, well, I guess that's a really nice bit of instant feedback as to, how they can understand an issue and understand a problem and what they're going to be doing in real life, isn't it? I guess it's quite a nice two-way street as well for them to see the kind of problems they're going to be working on.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So fantastic. Okay, great. Well, I mean, I don't want to make the whole episode about recruitment, and obviously, I'm sure you and I could speak about this for hours, given my background as well. But let's talk a little bit more about you as a leader. And I love this whole approach. It seems really innovative and really creative around, geographical freedom. Well, I say freedom, but obviously within that time zone, which is clearly a huge amount of quality talent that you've got access to. I love the kind of taking that sort of Spotify model of having these streams. I think it's clearly working to get this kind of level of 120 engineers. Is there anything else that you would say as a successful chief of engineering? Do you employ any particular strategies, methodologies, anything that you would say creates a high-performing engineering division?
Yes, I'm not sure about. So it's complex. If you have our size with 14 teams, you simply cannot have the high performance that you might achieve from a small team of 3 people, which is, for example, is a friend of mine company. They're super performant. In a week, they do much more than we can do. But this is a different playground. One of the principles that we employ as a company is delegation and trust. So we really delegate everything. I as a chief engineer, very rarely participate into stand-ups, for example.
Okay.
I do lead one project that is a newborn project in big data, which is something that we haven't done for the first 4 years, and now is the year to start that. Apart from that, I'm really delegate a lot. So does my colleague, chief architect and chief product owner. We by structure of delegation, we can achieve a lot, and we fully trust. And then we have each team with a team leader, which is again completely person of trust and a person of experience. So we want not just an architect or a person that has good personal skills in their job, but we want somebody that gets his hands dirty and her hands dirty. So that's very important. The other thing is technology. So I think my personal experience, I got to know the microservices approach most probably in this company. Truly, I heard about that in the company before, but has been constantly too new. I think my personal, I think there was a company in London called Halo Cab, and that eventually got dissolved. But we at BSB, we were lucky to have one of the main engineer that joined us, and he was the first that introduced concept of microservices there. And we didn't really know what it was. We thought we were doing microservices, but then it showed clearly we were not. And it is such a revolution in the way that you build teams, because you give something that was impossible before. And I, for myself, but I think for the industry, let's say 2017. Before 2017, I think either was only few knew how to do this and did properly, or the common pattern was not to use Docker, not to do microservices. That I think it's a very big statement, but I think it's true. After more and more people are using this technology, and the structure really benefits because you are cutting. It's simple to cut. It's simple to partition a company into teams. It's much more difficult to partition the software in two different domains if you haven't thought about that initially. Yeah. And you might find that the software responsible to send the invoice is inside the software responsible to give recommendation about product. And okay, that's fine. Obviously you wanted to hit the market. You did a certain decision to have everything contained, maybe one developer band. That's fine. But now you're going to separate this because otherwise you can't scale, you can't evolve, you will have troubles you will have one service might fail and take down two systems of yours. So you have all sorts of problems that will slow you down and will stop you to make different teams. 90% of everything, we call 90% as internal, but we were very lucky to start from zero. So it was a complete greenfield, which was one of the main reasons attracted me initially. It was a greenfield. It was a very ambitious project, a multi-year project already planned out from the founders and the investment. And we knew that results were expected quite soon. In a matter of a couple of years, the investor wanted to see results. But at the same time, we knew, because of our experience, that the size of scale that they were talking could not have survived by having a monolith or two monoliths, doesn't matter. Yeah. Now we have 400 microservices more or less, and that is actually when sometimes we talk internally in the leadership team as we have one of those now. We have one of those. We meant we have a product that spans multiple teams and multiple domains. How we do that? And it's funny how people that didn't work enough, or even business or even product that didn't work enough in monoliths, they don't know that the opposite is the problem. Having all so tangled together that you can't even change a button on the homepage because you're fearful that you will touch something else. That is really the problem. Not the problem having microservices. So you need to be careful not to abuse it. Obviously, if your goal as a business and The tech direction is getting something in the market as soon as possible to prove the market. If you don't do microservices start, because you will pay you might pay the knowledge gap in terms of time. You might pay the recruitment gap because you might need to hire a DevOps before you need really. You might delay for some reason because you haven't understood how to configure the internal ports between two services, and good luck explain that to your investor that wants the product out in a week. That's not going to work. However, if you have a plan of but certainly if you have a plan to have a B2B system where you're going to have a contractual problem if something fails, or you can't afford to take down one system and keep out another. So basically you structure something to survive over multiple years, or you're replacing something that in the industry exists, so the industry is mature to spend money on that kind of problem. I'd say just plan correctly the division of domains and plan correctly not to have services touching two domains. Just completely divide, because this choice will pay off very soon.
Fantastic. I mean, it feels like, listening to you talk about 90% of everything, it's kind of, I don't want to say, it was never destined to fail, but there's so many great things about the business so far and what you've achieved, and it feels like having the right people on board, the right talent, obviously people like yourself, clearly very a huge amount of expertise, a really exciting proposition, and I guess, like I said, a greenfield project. So that's obviously music to a lot of good engineers' ears, isn't it? That's what they want to hear. So that's probably a big carrot to dangle for any great talent to come on board as well. I appreciate not necessarily greenfield now, but it must have helped probably in the early stages. And then, like I say, just that sort of plan, I suppose, from the founders of the business, the alignment for everybody within it. It's sort of a perfect storm, really, of all the different ingredients you'd want to be a successful tech business. No doubt, though, with all of these things, as utopian as we paint the picture, there's always stuff that happens that you weren't anticipating, and the challenges that happen on a daily basis. So what would you, and how would you classify and categorize, I guess, some of the biggest challenges you face as a tech leader in your role here, and how have you overcome those?
Yeah, good question. You must be prepared that things will go wrong, and they always go wrong at the worst time. So that's
absolutely.
That's the biggest realization, to be honest, because if you appreciate this as part of life, you don't panic, or you panic less, or you actually don't. You try to be as conscious as possible when something happens, not to react and act instinctively. So that is how I overcome. And also, to answer your question, I think that's the biggest challenge the company I work for now has, is because of the scale that we reach, and because the realization was we actually took a path to build all the products that will help a maritime company, because the integration with the existing product would have taken equally long, and possibly be full of a commercial agreement and long partnership, or even politics. So we didn't want to go down that route, and we took maybe the more difficult route on build everything. You realize that to get a sale, you will need to build more. So you have 15 services to get a sale, you need 20. So you build 20, and then the second prospect partner or client will tell you, yeah, but we really miss that part of your software. You don't have that module. Okay, and then you have after 6 months, you plan the 6 months, you build other 4 modules, and then again. And we still not out. So now we have, you mentioned before, we have 7 divisions and more or less 50, I'd say 50 products. We don't count them, but more or less, that's my feeling. And we haven't stopped doing that. So we keep on expanding. The challenge with that is that you have more and more problems coming to leadership team. I talk for so we have 8 people in leadership team. So usually the problem we have subdivision, a small division of tasks, but in general, big problem come to the whole leadership team. So you you must be the biggest challenge is these problems that you never had to deal with arrive. They can be people problem, they can be funding problem, they can be any sort of problem. They arrive, you have to deal with it. But you must not lose confidence that what you did before, like the people that you hired, they are there for a reason. They went through a process for a reason. You build trust with them, and you must rely on them in the moment of difficulties, which is also true the opposite. So if you have the moment of difficulty and you feel like you have to do everything on your own, then you might reconsider some of the trust that you have in a certain key part of the organization, and then it's very something to embrace in a company that grow so fast is that you are not today you are in one division, but the visas change so rapidly. You shouldn't really feel upset if tomorrow you're in another division, and that's difficult. And I can appreciate why, because if you have a nice team, and maybe you have a nice team for the first time in many years, you really want to work with your team. Yeah. Unfortunately, that was a sign up. That you knew this when you sign up, that we have all these divisions. It's not a small software, and we are not into a business as usual when you can just manage and fix bugs. So you know that we have we might have a need to change team of people. So those sometimes are difficult problem to deal with, because you have multiple stakeholders that would like opposite outcome. But we have meetings. We democratically choose what should happen, and in general, after meeting, everyone agrees that was the decision, and everyone backs off his own opinion and just take on the decision of the company.
It sounds like you've got a really nice kind of balanced culture. And yeah, a couple of times you mentioned now something which I totally agree with, and I think it is only really the way you can take a business from a startup to a scale-up. It's the two words, it's delegation and trust. And, I totally agree with you. And I think about for myself, kind of scaling a relatively early stage business. I believe any culture or any company that's got a solid culture, there has to be an underlying layer of trust there, that you've got the right people doing the right job. And like you say, there's only one of you, one of me, you've got to be able to delegate, as much as sometimes, being a leader, you kind of want to put your hand in and help and, show people the way. Often that delegation process in itself is the learning curve for a lot of people. That's kind of what I've noticed, rather than me telling them what to do, it's like letting people, fail, but in a kind of within a sandboxed kind of environment, but knowing that they'll come to the right conclusion and kind of get to where they want to get to. So, but it works because you've had a really thorough and sort of considered process about the kind of people you've brought on board, and you've got the right talent.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the key thing there. There's no point sort of delegating and trusting the people that you are the wrong people, but it sounds like you've got that bit sort of nailed. So fantastic. Well, Fabrizio, I've really, really enjoyed the chat today. I think it's been a fantastic episode, and a huge amount of value shared. So all I can say is thank you very much for coming in and having a chat with us.
My pleasure. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Really enjoyed it. And I like to end every podcast with the same question, which I would like to ask you now, if I may. And is there what is your one favourite piece of advice that you've ever received? If there's kind of a go-to piece of advice that you pass on to your fellow humankind, what would that be for you?
That's very, very difficult. Many, especially from individuals. I think it's very important that anybody in an intellectual profession like the tech industry, you surround yourself with intelligent people that can mentor you, and you ask questions to people that know more than you. Maybe I remember very well one thing that I've actually read in a book, and that I tend to apply sometimes when especially in a difficult position, is just sometimes you need to do the right decision. You need to take the right decision. Basically, even if that is against other common beliefs, and you know that is right because you believe you believe the facts, you know the right, and sometimes you just have to take that decision, even if the consequence, even if you don't like the consequences. The book was saying something very extreme, like do the right thing and wait to be fired. That was the quote. It doesn't. You can change it a bit. It doesn't need to be so extreme, but the point was sometimes it might hurt you maybe to let go a colleague that you made a friendship with, or maybe might hurt because you really wanted to do a project that is not going to happen, or you hired somebody that you thought was perfect for a team and is not going to happen. Sometimes it is needed from you as a leader to actually do the right decision and just wait for the worst to happen.
Yeah, make that decision in as informed and as partial a way as you possibly can, and come what may, I guess. But yeah, great advice. Well, thank you again for coming in. Really appreciate it. And yeah, I'll definitely be keeping my eye close on 90% of everything's future success, of which I'm sure will be great based off track record to date. So yeah, thanks for coming in, and we'll speak soon.
Thank you.